Okay, considering the impactful nature of the recent cycle of storms that we've been through, we've been going a little bit more in depth here with you to get you up to speed on all of the different angles to be aware of from the current storm. Today, we want to look at a couple of specific concerns, particularly from this storm on Monday. So we're going to leave behind the pretty time lapse of the Sunday rain. And I just want you to see a unique map for California. This is put out by the Storm Prediction Center. They're based in the midsection of the country. We're going to come back to this map again a little bit later in this discussion because it's probably the most interesting and the important part about the forecast over the next 48 hours. But where you see that bullseye there for the Central Valley, that's showing the wording on here puts you in a slight risk for severe thunderstorms. But a little more nuanced than that, within that bright shade of green on there, there's actually a 5% chance that you could have the kind of thunderstorms that are capable of dropping funnel clouds, maybe even weak tornadoes. It's a much bigger concern in the Central Valley. It's not unheard of to have this occur, especially this time of year, but it doesn't happen often, and it usually gets a lot of attention, and it does need a lot of focus to make sure we're all aware of the potential of what's coming. And of course, here at home in the Bay, we're not in that bullseye, but we're just on the edge of it there. And what we are in this light shade of green, which covers everybody else, is still at least what they would call a marginal risk for severe thunderstorms. So the concern in the Bay is the severe thunderstorms, and that can give you some brief downpours, lightning show, pretty heavy rain to go along with them through the course of Monday, and gusty winds, and it could add a little bit on top of any flooding concerns. Here's one other way to look at this. If we just take one step back, this is Sunday afternoon, looking at the storm as a whole. Can you see the flashes out here? So there's the center of the storm. This is kind of the front where we're getting the majority of the rain through like Sunday night. And right through here, as you get close to the center, there are flashes showing you where the satellite is actually detecting lightning. And there's a lot of it. This is actually less than there has been, and probably less than there will be as it comes on shore, perhaps. We'll probably see a little bit of an uptick in this. So it's just one way of visualizing what's out at sea and heading our way. This storm is put together in a way to produce a decent amount of thunderstorms, and it is coming for the Bay. You can already see First Alert Dopplers detecting some of those off the coast. But what we need to do is just take the big picture overview here through the first half of Saturday. Saturday night's going to be quite rainy. And you can see the organized lines that are going to come through the Bay. These are going to have some pretty good downpours with them, really well organized as that comes through, which tells you that they're put together in a significant enough way to give you some good rain over short periods of time. The majority of the rain that we're going to see over this next two-day period is really coming on Sunday night. The excitement in terms of thunderstorms in those brief downpours is going to come on Monday, but the bulk of the actual accumulated rainfall is coming right here. And that time frame takes us through the Sunday night, into the overnight hours, and then by the time we get to like the pre-dawn hours, that phase comes to a close. And the widespread, steady, accumulating rain gives us a little bit of a break as we get into Monday morning. I mean, that's before the commute. However, that's when the next phase of the storm comes in. We've been watching this. This hasn't changed, only we have more nuanced specifics now to talk about why that's a little bit more of an important side of this storm for Northern California as a whole. And we're going to pause it right here. This is 9 a.m. on Monday, and you see the usual bullseyes, right? Those red, yellow, and green bullseyes that we typically see when we have isolated thunderstorms. But the one we're looking at here at 9 o'clock has a unique shape to it. It's kind of a mix between the bullseye and that organized line, only it's neither of those. It's almost got a little bit of a triangular, like there's an edge here. That's kind of an important signature to look at on radar because that's usually what the most intense thunderstorms look like. You get a little bit of a wedge down here and then it blossoms out. It's kind of like the point source right there of convection, kind of that real powerful outgrowth of a thunderstorm, and then it spreads out, and it also kind of gives you that like almost arrowhead shape as it does so. So this is not to say that exactly at 9:15 tomorrow morning we're going to have a severe thunderstorm over northern Sonoma County, but rather, because the model can't really get that specific, but what it can do is say the ingredients are there. And if it's not exactly there at exactly that time, there's still a pretty good chance we're going to have something resembling that somewhere. Probably more likely in the North Bay for the early morning hours, but watch what happens when I hit play. And I'm just going to let this go. We're going to take it from Monday late morning, and we're going to watch pretty much like 3 days. And it just kind of keeps going. So remember, at this point now, this is all day Monday. This is the day we're going to talk about that severe thunderstorm threat. Here's what it potentially looks like on radar. We're not going to pick out individual cells because it's not going to go exactly like this. But it's going to stay fairly active on again, off again. We get into Tuesday, perhaps another widespread band of rain comes through, but we just got to Wednesday. In fact, we're going to get to a point here where model data runs out. These things, for the high-resolution models, we can take them out 3 days. So here we are, Wednesday in the afternoon. We've run out of model data. It's still going, but it's not as widespread. Wednesday is really dwindling down. You'll see Wednesday's not a first alert day. Monday specifically is, for these reasons, for this character of the storms coming through on Monday. Tuesday is as well, just because of the leftovers. So before we get into the details on the severe nature of the storms, let's talk about the total rainfall. Remembering that what we're about to see here, most of this is the rain that falls Sunday night. So we're going to get close to 2 inches of rain in the North Bay. We'll get about 1.25 inches for just about everywhere else. So just to pause for a moment and talk about rainfall totals, just the rainfall amounts on their own and what impacts those could have, we have to talk about the flood watch. So the flood watch stays in effect until we get to Wednesday morning. It includes the entire Bay Area, and the drill on this is ponding of water on roadways, low-lying intersections, local streams and creeks that could approach their banks. This is enough rain that all those things will become a concern. The more likely time frame for all that, by the way, from the flooding concern, is going to be very late Sunday night through early Monday morning. And that's when we'd be thinking about, and probably into Monday afternoon, that's when we'd be thinking about the big rivers. And we looked at this in yesterday's long format review of this, and it hasn't changed much. This is the forecast for the level of the Russian River that goes through Sonoma County. You can see the days and the times going along the bottom. So here we are going into it. That'd be about Wednesday right there, and that's when the river level should peak. We look at the black line here for what we would call the deterministic forecast. That's the specific forecast of what the river is most likely to do. These lines here show you where a flood monitor and flood stage are. We don't get there according to that line, and we're pretty far away from it. But the area in purple shows you where there's a 20% chance you could get there. It's a small chance, but it's still there. And because flooding will be on people's minds, it's at least looking at these again and just giving you the review. San Lorenzo River through the Santa Cruz Mountains, it's the same drill. So we'll watch them. All right, let's go back now to what is probably the most interesting headline on this. So the Storm Prediction Center is back here in Oklahoma for good reason. Tornado Alley. This is where they're really charged with making sure they raise the awareness level when severe thunderstorms or tornadic activity is a possibility. We very rarely ever make this map. And when you look at the scale, technically we've made the map, but we're all the way on the low end of it. This is California. We don't get into the high end on this. So this is not like going to be a tornado outbreak. We're going to have thunderstorms. That's the main item. But it is an interesting point that we do find ourselves, at least in the Central Valley, with that shading of green, where you have a 5% chance of isolated funnel clouds, very weak tornadoes. So just a little bit of background on that. What is it with this storm that's able to do that? Some of it has to do with the time of year. We're kind of getting towards late winter, so we're kind of getting slight little spring essences of these storms, although not in a significant way, but there is warmer air in the lower levels where we all live, and that plays a role in this. But first, the wind. If you look at the wind through Northern California, on Monday, you see the streamlines on here. These are a southerly wind going up the valley. That's crucially important. In fact, let's get rid of that, and I'm just going to give you the visual, the generalized. There's your southerly wind going through the Central Valley. What's happening with this storm is in the upper levels of the atmosphere, it's coming at us in a very different direction and much faster. So you've got much stronger winds coming in from the west, placed on top of winds at the surface that are coming up at the south. So that's how you get that kind of shear in the atmosphere. Layers of the atmosphere moving in different directions. That's wind shear. And that's the primary ingredient, really, on the most basic level, for how you can get thunderstorms that start to take on a bit of a rotation and then could perhaps potentially even drop the occasional funnel cloud. Going along with that southerly wind, there's also warmer air. Watch what's going on with the warmer air that's coming up from the south. Remember, these winds coming in from the west, they're at a different direction, they're much faster, and they're also a lot colder because they're so much higher. And the other primary ingredient to get severe thunderstorms is a big difference in temperatures, with warm air below rising up into the colder air. And sure enough, as we get into tomorrow afternoon, you're going to have all these little pockets and cells of rising air. So now you've taken air that's relatively warm, relatively higher in humidity because of the storm that's around. So you've got the water vapor, which can also add some energy as that condenses out into clouds, and then that gives this more of a boost to keep rising. And you've put that all in an environment where you've got fast winds whipping here at one direction, matching up with the winds there, everything starts to spin. That's how thunderstorms start to get their rotation. That's the environment in which you can get an occasional funnel cloud from a thunderstorm. So let's come back. That's the Central Valley's concern. A 5% chance in the Sacramento Valley is low, but a 5% chance is still something. And we know the Central Valley can get these. They happen, probably at least every year to some degree. And so in that bullseye's the concern. So back here at home in the Bay, what's our concern? Well, we're a little too close to the edge of that. There is no forecast for tornadoes. It's not like we got a tornado watch. You'll never see a tornado watch issued in Northern California because the ingredients are never going to be strong enough beforehand for there to be a high enough degree of confidence. A 5% chance does not warrant a tornado watch. And here in the Bay, we're not even in that 5% chance. But we are right on the edge. And we are still shaded in light green, so let's not forget this. That light green tells us we have a chance to see the severe thunderstorms, probably without the funnel clouds. Although we had one develop in Sonoma County, you might remember about 2 or 3 weeks ago. There was a small little funnel cloud that developed up there. So in terms of these funnel clouds and tornadoes, just a little background, in case one develops over the next few days and the terms get thrown around, how strong was it? If we're going to see one of these in California, we're going to see the 2 weakest. In other words, this is the scale for rating tornadoes. The EF scale goes from 0 to 5, right? These are the monsters that really just destroy entire towns down here, EF5s, and you can see the wind speeds, 200 miles an hour. The picture over there shows you the damage you can expect when one of those at that scale occurs. So we know the terrible destruction that we see on our TV screens when this happens in places like Oklahoma. But here at home, we have the potential to see zeros and ones. One, really in the worst case, they can get a little stronger, but it's very rare. So what would happen in that case? Look at the zeros and the ones up here. Trees get broken or snapped. Some shingles, some sidings get ripped off of roofs in a 0. And in a 1, maybe like some unsecured, like trailers, can kind of get knocked over. Not destroyed, but knocked over. And then there's flying debris because let's not forget, if you get an E of 1, you've got wind speeds that are close to 100 miles an hour. So that's why it's a serious thing. We'll keep an eye on it. That's probably the most interesting part of this storm. But the way this storm is put together, you kind of see where this thing is out here. Here's the jet stream, a very strong jet stream, which is adding energy to this. That's one of the reasons why we've got this possibility for severe thunderstorms, is because you've got all that wind speed up there. We're not right under that, which is good. Our storm sits right here, and what our storm's going to do, and the reason why this is going to take 3 days, is because while the jet stream's down here, and it's going to go that way, our storm's going to cut itself off. It's going to spin itself up, and it's going to kind of meander up here, meaning it's cut off from the jet stream. It's a cut-off low. There's nothing to motivate it to move. It's just going to sit there for 3 days. And it's going to sit there for 3 days with the center of it kind of close to us. That's where the thunderstorms live. That's also where some of the strongest winds are. Now, we've lucked out with this storm because the winds aren't as bad as they looked like they would be just yesterday. So if you were with us on the update on this for yesterday, we still have a wind advisory. But the winds are downgraded a little. They weren't that strong as we went through Monday morning. I was looking at peak gusts. We were around 30. We're still going to get our break here for Sunday. And then as we get into Monday, a second little impulse of wind will come through because the center of that storm's sitting right off the coast. And we'll feel it. So we'll get gusts up to around 30 to 40 miles an hour as that comes through. That's why we've still got the wind advisory, and that stays in effect until we get to Tuesday at 4 a.m. If you're curious, it's going to snow in the Sierra from this one. Relatively high, snow levels down to around 6,000 feet, and it's going to be very wet snow. This is an atmospheric river. We spent a lot of time talking about that yesterday. It's a weak to moderate atmospheric river, which means it's got a lot of moisture to work with. We're getting big rain, but it's also relatively warm. And if you're familiar with Sierra cement, that's the real wet, sloppy, heavy snow. And that's what this will be, and it'll be falling up at higher elevations. And then the last thing is, we got a surf advisory. Look at that big swell. This one's not too overwhelming, but as we get into Tuesday right there, we are going to be looking at the possibility for dangerous surf. So that's going to stay in effect through Tuesday at 4. All right, those are all the main headlines from this. There's a lot to cover. We're going to be tracking this live on KPIX through the evening on Sunday. Jessica Birch is going to be in all morning long as this storm is coming through. She's going to have some of the most active part of this storm while she's on the air. She goes on at 5 a.m. on Monday, and then they switch over to Pix Plus. You can stay with her there. She'll be on from 7 to 9 if you're a late riser, and then, of course, we'll keep going through the day. She'll still be on at noon. I'll come back in at 3, and then Paul Hagan will take over for the rest of the night. Thanks for checking in with us. We are going to keep you updated on this storm as it moves through.